very much for that invitation. I hope you can hear me. I'll need someone to load my slides and to move it forward. Will you be doing that, or
We
is it
can hear you, sir, and your slides are on.
great? So shall we get started?
Yeah, please.
I cannot see the slides, Navneet. Are they being loaded?
So we can see it on the screen. Maybe
Okay,
the back
that's
end, if an arrangement can be done. We can
surprising
see the
because
slides.
I can't see anything. So I'm not sure which slide you have on the screen. If it's the title slide, then let me start with that. If you
It's
can
the
see it
goal
on.
slide, the goal, the 120 billion pharma.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am presenting on behalf of a large team. I get to have my name on the presentation and the report, but it's really a teamwork from many different people. The Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, one of the gentlemen was in front of you, Invest India, and another large organization that does not wish to be named. So, why are we developing the innovation index? The innovation index is being developed because, as Mr. Kant referred to in his talk, if India is setting off on its goal of trying to enhance the R&D capability and output, new drugs, new medicines, new chemical entities, new molecular entities, new biological entities, then we need to be able to track, monitor, and evaluate performance on an ongoing basis. We need to measure. The goal is a fairly large ask. We want to more than 2.5 times, have growth of 2.5 times, 220 billion over the next few years. And so therefore, different people need to come together: government, industry, academia, policies, consultants, financiers, and so on. And in doing so, we will be able to satisfy the sustainable development goals that we have set for ourselves. And so within the, hopefully, the R&D monitoring and evaluation framework that is part of the R&D policy that the government has just kind of released, our hope is that the innovation index becomes a part of the monitoring mechanism. Next slide, please. So as part of that process, we started to put together the people, and here one must compliment the leadership of Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. And the front for that was Mr. Sudarshan Jain, who put together a team that includes me, even though I'm presenting. And the team consisted of myself from IIM Ahmedabad, people from the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. Navneet is one of them, Devang, Archana, and others. Invest India, Jitesh, and another large organization. All of this was done virtually, by the way. I think one of the great things about COVID, and I say that seriously despite all the negative stuff that we have seen over the last 1.5 years, is that we've all learned to work digitally in some ways. So that was the first part of the process, getting the people together in the data to do the work. Next slide, please. So as you can see, in terms of the process essentially was threefold: data collection, the approach, and the analysis. So early on, the decision was to have two dimensions to the index. One dimension is a qualitative perceptual part. The other dimension is a quantitative part, which is based on relevant secondary data that is gathered from many different sources. The perceptual data was gathered from industry leaders, from people in academia, in researchers, from organizations like the NIPERS, AIMS, Institute of Toxicology, labs from CSIR, and so on. The data from financials or investors was gathered from private equity and venture capitalists who have knowledge of and or have invested in the pharma biotech space over the last few years, and industry leaders, of course. The quantitative data was gathered from secondary sources, from World Intellectual Property Organization, for instance, in terms of the Patent Cooperation Treaty filing data, the Indian government databases on the number of postgraduates in the relevant disciplines from the US sources, and so on. So for any index, therefore, what is the first thing that you need to do? You have to first set a benchmark. And the benchmark that we chose was that on a scale of 1 to 10, the US was ranked at 8 in terms of R&D, both on the qualitative and quantitative part. So on R&D and innovation, the US is ranked at 8. And we chose to construct the index at 2 points in times, 2018 being the base year and 2021 is where we are today, also to get a sense of whether we are making any progress or not. The analysis, of course, I'll take you through more details of the analysis as we go forward. And after collecting the data from both the qualitative part and the quantitative part, we merged the two, the qualitative index and the quantitative index, into one composite pharma index, and to be able to then get a sense of where we are compared to the US. If the US is at 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, where should India be? So moving on to the next slide, please. If you look at this slide, so what were the dimensions, the qualitative dimensions on which we gathered data? So the qualitative dimensions include the regulatory landscape indicators, such as what are the timelines to approval, what is the ease of submission, what is transparency like, what is the ease of getting funding, what is the ROI of innovation, what is the quality of the R&D talent that is available, how much of in licensing and out licensing is taking place, and what is the level of novelty of the innovation pipeline. Here I have to admit to you that collecting the perceptual data was not an easy task. We sent out questionnaires to 142 people, included industry leaders, industry associations, uh, clinical research organizations, academic leaders and research organizations, scientists, financiers, private equity, venture capitalists, and so on. And after multiple follow-ups by the team and some a little bit myself included, we were able to get around 69 responses, which is distributed as follows. The established local and foreign pharma firms account for around 70%, sorry, 56% out of the 69 responses. And then you have the academic institutions, which are around 15%, and the rest distributed between the CROs, investment organizations, and others. Please do recollect that this is perceptual data. People are kind of giving their perceptions on where they think that the Indian industry is with respect in comparison to the US on a scale of 1 to 10, if the US is ranked at 8 in the year 2018 and 2000 in the year 2021. Next slide, please, Navneet. So as you can see from this slide, on most instances, in most cases, the perception of the combination of industry leaders, academics, researchers, private equity is
Arvind Sahai.
Is that we have improved. We have improved from 2018 to 2021, anywhere from 4.2, 4.07, 4.3.85, and so on, to an approximately somewhere between 5.2 and 6, or 5.09 and 6. Do recall that this is a perceptual survey. These are perceptions of people, industry leaders, academics, scientists, and so on, who are telling us that this is what they think is where Indian R&D and innovation ranks as compared to the US, on a scale of 1 to 10, if the US is taken as 8. Next slide, please. Moving on to the quantitative dimensions of the index. If you look at the quantitative dimensions of the index, we have 5 different super dimensions, regulatory approval for different modalities. So essentially over here, we mentioned the timelines for vaccines, 2 different kinds of vaccines, recombinant and non-recombinant vaccines, new chemical entities, new biological entities, and so on. And then the funding, what is the total private capital for R&D? What is the direct government funding? What is the primary funding through private equity and venture capitalists? Publications in international journals, citations, number of quality STEM graduates, percentage, number of PCT patents filed, and then output dimensions. Ultimately, we need to measure the output. What is the number of new molecular entities registered? Now, in each one of these, there would be an element of judgment in a sense. So, for example, total private capital for R&D, difficult to get that number per se, but applying the typical Pareto principle that 80% thing is looked at by around 20%. We looked at the top 15 companies by R&D expenditure and revenue across the US and India, and took that as a proxy for the total private capital which was spent. And that data is publicly available. Anybody can take that. Primary funding through BEVC is what actually available in a straightforward manner from databases, as were a number of publications in international journals and citations from Scopus, from Schemago, and so on. For STEM graduates, quality STEM graduates, we looked at only postgraduates and PhDs uh, in the relevant subject areas, and that were then scaled by the population to make it a little more comparable. Because if you have a similar number in a country of scientists in a country of 330 million versus a country of 1,350 million, I mean, that needs to be scaled. But ultimately, the output dimension has to be measured, which is the number of molecular entities coming out, and that we looked at as it is. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of where the data came from. So if you look at the regulatory landscape timelines, the data came from CDSCO, Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, and industry sources. Total private capital came from annual reports and public disclosures. Direct government funding, again, from annual reports of DBT, ICMR. Primary funding from the PitchBook, publications from Schemago, patents from WIPO, number of STEM postgraduates from the All India Survey on Higher Education, report by Ministry of Education. For the USA, it came from the National Center for Education Statistics. For number of cross-border deals, you've got pharma deals and Indian CTRI database, and then new molecular entities coming from a particular country from the US FDA database. Next slide. And so, having gotten all of this data, we then looked at what the numbers would add up to in comparison to the US. And as you can see over here, the numbers over here in the quantitative part are somewhat lower than what you see in the qualitative part. So funding, for example, in 2018, we are ranked at 1.83, which is less than what it was in the qualitative index. Similarly, if you look at the number of new molecular entities, we have some distance to go. So if you combine all of those along a weight, and the weight comes from the perceptual survey, we get a qualitative index of 2.4, a quantitative index of 2.46 in 2018 on a scale of 1 to 10, where the US is at 8, and our the quantitative index improves by around 13% to 2.79 in 2021. So about a 13% improvement in the quantitative index over a period of 3 years as compared to where it was in 2018. And so, next slide, please. If you combine these indices, then you have on a 60-40 basis. So why 60-40? Why not 50-50? Essentially, in conversations with people within industry and the government and scientists, the sense was that perhaps the qualitative survey should have a somewhat lower weightage, and this is also backed up by some literature in the behavioral psychology area, which suggests that, and, if you're looking for a citation, Einhorn and Hogarth have some interesting papers on this. It suggests that when you're doing perceptual surveys, people have a natural overconfidence in their judgments, and so the perceptual survey might have taken it a little bit more than what it should have been, and so the final weightage is 60-40. And based on that, the composite index that we have come to for the Indian pharmaceutical industry in terms of R&D and innovation, we calculate as 3.08 in the year 2018, which improves to around 3.78 in the year 2021. So a reasonably substantial improvement, 0.7 on a base of 3.08. So that's around 20% over 3 years. So we are improving at an aggregate level. Nevertheless, as you will have noticed from different areas, different dimensions on both the quantitative part and the qualitative part, while we have improved quite substantially from a regulatory timelines perspective over the last 3 years, funding continues to remain an issue. The output in terms of molecular entities continues to remain an issue. The patent filings itself are actually not that bad, not that much lower in terms of a scale, around 4.5 compared to the US at 8, but the actual molecular entities coming out is a lot less. Now, at this juncture, I should say that the whole point of constructing an index is that the first time that the index is constructed, it's mainly a baseline. The absolute value of the index that we have calculated at 3.08 versus 3.78 is just a kind of a benchmark against which future calculations of the index need to be compared, and that would be based on what are the numbers that come up in each one of the dimensions that we've already used over here. So next year, if, for example, the number of new chemical entities is more, or the number of quality STEM graduates goes up, or the funding goes up, then the index will improve. And so in that sense, the movement of the index over time gives us a sense of whether we are moving in the right direction or not. And also the movement tells us which of the components are driving the movement, and so therefore where should there be more effort. Ultimately, of course, the goal is that one should be having more output in terms of the new chemical and molecular entities. Next slide, please. So like any research that is done to come to some results, are there some caveats? Yes. At least two informative indicators were not used in the quantitative part of the index. The number of clusters and the other one was the industry academia collaboration, both quite important because of the lack of availability of data or meaningfulness of the data that was available. This also points to the fact that putting together data, relevant data for an exercise, a research-based exercise like this, was something of a challenge. And my earnest and humble request to both the industry and the government is to think seriously about how this can be facilitated in the future, not just from the viewpoint of construction and running of an index on an annual basis for monitoring and evaluation of research progress, but also for policy making purposes and for more productive conversations between industry and government. Because when conversations are based around data, then conversations tend to be a lot more productive. And of course, if you have data-based conversations, you can take decisions which are more likely to be correct, and also you can anticipate some stuff which is happening if the data is there in place. Last slide, please. Next one. And so therefore, what are some next steps, at least from my perspective, going forward? This is an exercise which I would strongly recommend, and I hope that is conducted annually, so that we are actually able to track progress of R&D innovation in terms of output and processes. Allows us to say that this is where the effort should be put going forward into the future. We should also be looking at some moonshot initiatives in research and development. For example, is it going to be computational biology, genomics, and so on? It was very interesting that earlier in the day, in the Innovation Grand Challenge, there was one particular submission which actually was using computational biology to be able to increase the not only the efficiency but also probably the efficacy of being able to discover and develop new products. We do need to get more scientists to operate out of India, and one of the things that I would strongly recommend is trying to catch hold of associate professors in relevant areas to come to India and operate from India. That's the stage at which the move to India is a lot more feasible from many different perspectives. And we do need to strengthen the regulatory capacity, though there is substantial movement on this dimension already in the last years, and hopefully going forward, there's a lot more movement. The good news, of course, I think, and that came through from the perceptual survey, is that there is a general sense of optimism. Around 70% of the people are either slightly or very optimistic about the way R&D and innovation is moving forward in the country. And that to me is very encouraging, because if there are enough people who have optimism which is based on good solid reasons, and the people who have responded in the survey are some of the leading lights of the industry. If they are optimistic, then I think we are all in a good place. So thank you very much for your attention. With that, let me close my presentation. My thanks once again to the entire team from many different areas, IPA, Invest India, and another large organization that helped to put together this particular index. And I hope that this is useful for the industry and for the government going forward. Thank you very much.